hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So, how are you all going? Yeah, Melissa, it was it's a day off for you, so you're doing extra time.
Indeed. So I have a very bad internet connection. So hopefully it will work well. I'm just teetering on my cellular connection. So because I'm away in a remote place, so hopefully I won't share my video, but hopefully the audio will be working just fine.
Okay, we don't want. Yeah, you're probably in a better place than we are.
Yeah.
So Logan, I'll let you
Ready to
start.
start? So first of all, thank you all for making the time for this interim meeting. I'm going to share my screen. So first off is I don't see Pearl on our call. So do we maybe wait for him for one more minute?
Oh, he didn't mention he's going to attend. So
Okay, I understood. So next, so the first item on the agenda is revoke token notification. So
Hi, this is Marco. Yeah, just a few words. I confirmed since IETF-116 we had a resubmission addressing the reviews from the working group last call, and we replied to those on the mailing list. So from the author's point of view, we think we are down for now, and the next step should be the Shepherd review and write-up, as in the slide.
no, now I'm talking, Goran. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. So next is PubSub profile.
I can say a few words on this too. Yeah, there was a private exchange between the chairs and the authors. SIGDEM mostly didn't have time to check on this yet. I've had a full reading on the whole draft, and with SIGDEM we are going to have later in May first discussion on some outstanding open points. In the meanwhile, I'll do my best to start already addressing uncontroversial editorial points on the GitHub. But yeah, probably we'll have more in terms of progress already at the next interim. Depends a lot on SIGDEM.
Them going to resume. Did you hear my question?
No, I didn't get it, Logan.
no.
Is when is SIGDEM going to resume?
I think in the second half of May. So that's where we're planning
Understood.
to have a first discussion among authors.
Any other question about PubSub profile? The next item is OS Core GM admin. So
Yeah, that's me again, hopefully the last one. I started to work on the split. So I created on the ACE GitHub organization new repo for this document with the agree title. It used to be just a skeleton until a few days ago. I've been filling it with content. I pull back from the main draft. As soon as I have something complete, I'll start polishing the main draft, actually taking away Coral content from them until we have both documents ready for a resubmission. And GM admin Coral would be a version 0, of course. So it's mostly work in progress on the split on the GitHub.
Thank you again, Marco, as usual. So on the co-op ESTOS core, I believe that we have slides ready, so I'm just going to load them. Can you guys?
Yeah. So can you switch when I give you the signal to go next slide? Could you?
Okay, sure, no worries.
Yeah. So hi, this is Militia speaking. So I'll present the update to the EST score draft, which was recently adopted in ACE. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there was a call for adoption on the list, which ended on 19th of April. The draft was adopted as a working group document. In the meantime, we received a review from Marco on 29th of April. So I would just like to take the opportunity to thank Marco for this review. Really, a million thanks, Marco. I've already went ahead and fixed non-controversial points, the points I deemed as non-controversial, and they are fixed in this pull request that is open in GitHub. I will go ahead after this meeting and respond to Marco's email with point-to-point replies to these points which were fixed. And the goal of my today's presentation is to discuss the remaining comments from Marco. That require a little more discussion than usual. So next slide, please. So first comment is here. I mean, the outline of the next slides will be the italic words represent the Marco's quote. Then I give some context, and then the proposed action at the very end. So the first comment is regarding the message flow, which is implied in the draft to be a forward message flow in respect to the roles of ad hoc peers and the EST protocol client and roles. So the implied flow is that the EST client is currently the ad hoc initiator, and this is implicitly assumed throughout the draft, but there is no explicit mention of it whatsoever. So Marco brought up a question whether a reverse flow where the EST client plays the role of the ad hoc responder can be ruled out. And I think that we can safely rule out. I don't see a use case for that role unless someone can bring it up. So my proposed action here would be to explicitly specify in section 3, which is the section on authentication, that the EST client must play the role of the ad hoc initiator unless there are any objections to this. I hear no objections. So, okay, I note approval from Joran in the chat. So I suppose this can be yes. So okay, so the proposed action, let's keep it as here. Next slide, please. Yes, so the Marcos comment number 2 is on section 1, where we state that we also support pre-shared OSCOR keying material. And apart from supporting the exchange, the ad hoc exchange for authentication. And Marco is asking whether in such a case channel binding is simply not achievable, or it is somehow possible as long the OSCOR keying material was established through some sort of interactive protocol. So to respond to this, I would like to give context while we use channel binding in the first place. And we are mimicking what EST-CoAP-S is doing in terms of making channel binding optional in order to counter, which they do in order to counter the triple shake attack on TLS 1.2. And since we are not using TLS 1.2, you might wonder why are we doing this. And we are having optional channel binding in order to counter any future attacks. So essentially for future proofing the protocol and to have a possibility of linking the ad hoc session to the EST exchange. Now the question is, what if OSCOR security context is pre-shared and ad hoc was not executed prior to the enrollment? My proposed action would be simply to specify that ad hoc exporter-based channel binding is applicable only to cases when ad hoc is executed. So essentially just an editorial note in the draft that we support this, and that we do not support it for cases when pre-shared OSCOR context is used. Unless there is any objection to this. Yes.
One thing I didn't get is
Yes.
why do we have to specify TLS 1.3, 1.2, and not 1.3?
So no, this is in EST-CoAP-S draft, not in our draft.
Okay. Okay, right.
So it's not related. I was saying that EST-CoAP-S, which is RFC 9148, if I'm not mistaken, specifies optional channel binding to counter this triple shake attack on TLS 1.2, and they also go ahead and specify the TLS using the TLS exporter interface for TLS 1.3, so that they cover both cases. But
Okay,
the
right.
origin, but from what I understood from that draft is that this requirement on having optional support for channel binding comes from the need came from the need to counter the triple shake attack, which is a specific attack on TLS 1.2. But they kept it also and as they discuss in the security considerations for TLS 1.3. So are there any comments on this?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Yes. During the last IETF, there was a discussion about TLS 1.2. And I recall during a discussion that around deprecating TLS 1.2, at least leaving it frozen. And one of the issues were mentioned by, I think, one of the guys from Google or YouTube, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that TLS 1.2 will be around for a long time due to the large number of embedded devices that will not be upgradable for a while. So I think this is relevant here. I mean, it makes sense on my side.
Okay, so just to make sure, so we are not using TLS 1.2, so this was just making a parallel with RFC 9148. We are using in this draft, in EST OSCOR draft, we are using ad hoc to achieve authentication. Ad hoc is another protocol which is being standardized in IETF Lake, another working group of the IETF. And but we are still using, in this draft we have a mechanism similar to TLS 1.3's exporter interface to achieve channel binding.
I said understood. Thank you very much for clarification.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so if there are no other comments on this slide, I propose we keep the proposed action. I did not, there is a question by Marco. Marco, maybe you can, maybe you can jump in on, is it somehow possible, as long as the Oscar King material was established through some sort of interactive protocol? We do not detail this in the draft, so I don't think it's really relevant to specify channel binding for something that is not detailed in the draft. Do you agree with this, or?
Yeah, I agree. For sure, it's good to state that if you have pre-shared material, you just don't have it. I think you can just leave silently open for possibly achieving that if you establish the material in a way different than ad hoc. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Okay, then next slide, please. Yes, so this is Marco's comment on using in scenarios where using message 4, wouldn't it make sense to have the PKCS10 request and response transported in EAD3 and EAD4 item respectively? So I just want to clarify here that EST payloads are currently carried in OSCOR protected messages, so they are not carrying within the external authorization data fields of ad hoc. And this is specifically for the reason to be homogeneous with respect to the re-enrollment and not require ad hoc. So essentially, when we do the first enrollment, we want to do it with OSCOR and not with ad hoc, not with EAD fields, in order to be homogeneous when we do re-enrollment, that we do not require ad hoc in the first place. So my assessment, so this is as it is detailed here on this slide, is that carrying request and response in the EAD items would complicate the protocol, as the flow would no longer be homogeneous. And I propose to take no action on this comment unless there is some discussion and some compelling argument that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, Marco here. I think no
Yes.
action is good. Honestly, I missed the re-enrollment option when reading the document. I don't know if it's there already. So maybe it makes sense actually to say that that path is intentionally excluded or not considered in the interest of a better alignment that you have instead if you consider the combined ad hoc plus OSCOR request, because in that case the EST message is in all effect an OSCOR co-op message.
Yes, but I wasn't sure when message 4 is used. Can we still use combined OSCOR ad hoc and OSCOR
No,
request?
you can't. You can't in that case.
Okay.
But I'm saying it's good to rule out EAD items then. I think there's value in stating that explicitly.
Okay, so
in the interest of alignment with re-enrollment tool, and what you keep instead, including the possible optimization with the combined request, is aligned. So it makes sense also in the interest of re-enrollment.
Okay, so I also note in the draft a comment by Yoran, carrying EST in OSCOR is also analogous to RFC 9148, where the EST messages are not sent in the handshake. So what I gather here is that we should clarify essentially for the optimization. I'll sync up with Marco for exact action to take on the mailing list. Do we have any? Yes?
Just thank you.
Okay, all right. Next slide, please.
So Alisa,
Yes.
action is going to be taken on this for more like clarification.
Yes, so more clarification, and I will detail this. We will discuss this on the mailing list in my response on the mailing list.
Understood.
So this one is straightforward. So in terms of the proposed action, the comment is on per section. Marco's comment is per section 9 of RFC 8613, which is the OSCOR RFC. The OSC attribute is optionally included in a link to specify that a resource has to be accessed with OSCOR. Should it remain optional here too? And then Marco goes on and gives a compelling example where we support both the OSCOR and DTLS that accessing a resource when we are accessing a resource and over DTLS, and we are it may signal to the device that we are essentially using EST CoAP-S and we are not instead of EST OSCOR. And I think the proposed action here is really to mandate the OSC attribute in links to EST resources in order to signal that we are using EST OSCOR. So I'll give a minute if anyone wants to comment. So this is +1 there is +1 from Joran in the chat. So I note that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I support the proposed action. It's better than the alternative one that I hope was not considered, in fact.
Oh yes, I forgot to mention. Yeah, the alternative would be to define a new set of EST OSCOR resource type values.
I think it makes sense also this direction.
Thanks, Rickard.
I pronounced my name correctly, right? It's Ricard.
Yeah, Rickard. I mean, you're close enough, I think. Yeah.
Ricard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I propose we move on to the next slide then. So the next slide is related to server-side generation of keys, and Marco's comment is, regards the response from SKC resource, which is, and he's asking, is it possible to deviate from what is defined in 19148 and not encrypt the private key? After all, end-to-end encryption of the whole EST payload is ensured by OSCOR. And then if yes, that might open for a new content format pair, an unencrypted PKCS8 private key together with a single certificate. So just to give context here, in our draft, contrary to EST CoAP-S, registrar may terminate the details connection. Also, protection is
you dropped. Can you repeat the last sentence, because I think you dropped for 2 seconds.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you disappeared for a moment.
Okay, sorry about that. It's my connection probably. So I was.
So please repeat what you were saying.
Yes. So I was saying about the Marco's comment. I was reading out the Marco's comment, and that is it possible to deviate from what is defined in RFC 9148 and not encrypt the private key? After all, end-to-end encryption of the whole EST payload is ensured by OSCOR. And just to give context on this, in our draft, contrary to EST CoAP-S, where registrar may terminate the DTLS connection, OSCOR protection is end-to-end between the EST client and the EST server. So this indeed allows the private key to be returned as unencrypted PKCS8 because the key will later be encrypted by OSCOR. But we are not specifying, we are not mentioning this in the draft. And my assessment is that we can safely specify this in the draft and use the proposal by Marco on the content format pair. So is there any objection to this proposed action? Okay, I hear none. There is a +1 by Karsten. Thanks, Karsten. So I propose we move on to the next slide. So these two comments are really straightforward. So the comment is on content formats mimicking RFC 9148, which we indeed intend to do, but we did not explicitly state. And the proposed action is really to just explicitly make a statement on the content format support as in RFC 9148. So this should be non-controversial. And to add a table similar to RFC 9148 table 3 in our draft in order to summarize the supported content formats. Is there any objection to this? I note good from Karsten, so that's thanks, Karsten.
Goran as well.
Goran as well. Yes. So I propose we keep this. Okay. And Rickard. Okay, so we have good support for this. Okay, so next slide, please. So there is a list of requirements in section 4.4, which is currently preceded by "it is recommended that," which makes these requirements optional. However, isn't it a must for at least the co-op options, OSCOR and URIPAT? And I give a screenshot of the proposed action where essentially I am proposing to replace the recommended with required in order to mandate the support for these set of requirements that are listed here. So the first one is that the EST OSCOR endpoints must support delayed responses. The second one is that the endpoints must support the following co-op options, which is OSCOR option, which is natural because we are using OSCOR to protect, URI host, URI path, URI port, content format, block 1 and block 2, and accept. And the third one is that the EST URLs based on HTTPS are translated to co-op, but with the mandatory use of the co-op OSCOR option. So the action here is to change from a recommended to required. So I would like to hear if there are any voices against making this change.
So, Göran here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm a little bit curious. Why do we need to mandate this, or what is the impact? I understand that you have to have an OSCOR option because you're using OSCOR, so that's clear. But and URI path, of course, if you need to identify which of the different enrollment operations that's going to be used. But why do we need to go into this detail of mandating options?
So it could be one response I can make is that there was a comment on this specific section that was recommended before, so that it was optional. So now the question is what should we do with it? and whether we should mention. I guess your comment is whether we should be mentioning this at all.
Yeah, I think I lost. I think I never understood the context here from RFC 9148. So, but maybe someone else has a better view of why this is needed or not. I need to think more about it.
Yeah, I think the problem is that statements like this can be misinterpreted as overriding the statements in the normative references. And that problem is understood as the restatement anti-pattern, because it makes implementers believe the requirements are actually in the referencing document and not in the reference document. And you need to be very, very careful when you restate things that are in other standards, that you qualify this restatement as a note or as something that is a logical consequence of what's already there, as opposed to a new statement that overrides existing statements. So by making all of these requirements, turning all of these into requirements, you evade this little problem, because you are not giving the implementer leeway in misinterpreting this as relaxing the details from the reference standards. But generally, I would hope that when we do restatements, we are always very explicit about them being consequences or summaries or notes, as opposed to just saying something as if it were a new statement that replaces existing statements.
When you say existing here, are you referring to RFC 9148 or some other?
Well, if you want to use OSCOR, then you need to support the OSCOR option.
Clearly.
Yes.
If you want to use host names, you need to support the URI host option.
Right.
So this is all just summary information.
Okay.
And information that I think is actually useful as a checklist for an implementer, so I would leave it in every case. But it should not be stated as a new requirement. It should be something that is identified as something that simply is required by nature and not required by fiat here in this particular statement.
So it's more of the kind that note that this specification is using the following co-op options, which therefore must be implemented if you're going to use them. Is that the message?
That's how I read this, and I hope I get some support from the people who actually wrote this, because I might be misunderstanding it too.
So I believe you're reading it correctly, Karsten, and the action I hear now is to summarize this without a requirement, even though you mentioned the keyword must, but without making a normative statement here on that we need to support these options, that it's just a natural consequence of having support for OSCOR, essentially.
So adding note that at the start of the first sentence and downcasing the required would make sure that this is not misunderstood as a new requirement. Keeping it upcased is a little bit wrong, but not really hurting here.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Do we have any other comments on this?
I just typed the corresponding. Well, there are a couple of sentences in the corresponding section, which is also section 4. Yeah, section 4.4. Sorry. I don't see any normative language there.
Oh, in RFC 9148.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a remnant then from the previous version of the draft, which I think we can fix by evading any requirement keywords, any normative keywords.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so let's write down in the minutes that the action here is to rephrase this, to not to use any normative language, and to precede the sentence with note that. Next
Yeah,
slide.
maybe add a therefore to the second sentence.
Okay, and therefore, yes. Next slide, please. So the next slide is on a sentence that I quote here: the EST URLs based on HTTPS are translated to COAP, but with mandatory use of the COAP OSCOR option. And the comment is that the scheme COAP is the translation target only if DTLS is not additionally used. So my proposed action here is to explicitly mention that if DTLS is used, the scheme is COAP S. And I hope I'm not misunderstanding something here. Marco, maybe you could comment.
Yeah, as you said, it's mostly a special case when you use both OSCOR and DTLS. If you use OSCOR only, the translation is into COAP.
Okay, and it's correct to state that if DTLS is used, the translation scheme is COAP S.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so it's a minor, so it's a small fix to make. Okay. Okay, unless there are other comments on this slide, I propose we move on to the next.
Okay.
So this is actually related to the discussion we just had on normative statement in section 4.4, I believe. And Marco's comment is that he quotes, this specification mandates the implementation of COAP option block 1 and block 2 fragmentation mechanism, which contradicted the text where COAP option block 1 and block 2 is only recommended. So I had a mandate block as a proposed action on this slide was to mandate block 1 and block 2 in section 4.4 as per slide number 9, which is the discussion we just had. But since we agreed on having just informational text in that section, we should probably restate this to also to some informative language. I don't know. I don't see a better resolution at this point. Maybe I would need to think a little bit about more, unless there are new comments. So Marco is saying that it sounds good. So just to make sure, the proposed action is to rephrase this to informational text, informational note, instead of mandating anything as it is, because this is just a reference to the section 4.4.
Anybody else?
This is not what your slides are saying?
No, so no. So we do not want to as per the discussion we just had, Carson, on slide number 9, we don't want to mandate anything on block 1 and block 2 in section 0.4. So my proposed action, this is not the proposed action I'm proposing in here. It's just to informatively summarize that that it's a logical consequence of the draft that these options need to be implemented.
Okay. And what will be the effect of interoperability?
So, but I mean, so block 1 and block 2, especially regarding block 1 and block 2, or?
Yes.
So are you saying that we should mandate them, or I don't know how in terms of
I'm,
co-op?
I'm,
Yes.
I don't have a strong opinion on this yet. I just think that if you single these out to be optional, then essentially you are creating an interoperability problem when you happen to hit a link that has problems with large packets. So I'm just trying to understand what the rationale behind that is.
Yeah, I think this was a good discussion, because first we had the more principled discussion about what to mandate, whether we should mandate any co-op options, and now we have a specific example of where it might be useful. But I'm thinking like this. So we're doing certificate enrollment. So if there is a certificate coming back, we probably have a problem with fragmentation. And then again, do we have options when there is not a certificate coming back? I'm thinking loud now. So do we have a case where you get back just a reference rather than a certificate? Because in that case, you may not need to implement any fragmentation scheme because you don't have the sizes. And when you need, as we said, you implement URI host because you need to send domain names, or there is some obvious need for the certain options. So I don't have a strong conclusion here. I'm just noting that either we could rely on that we state somewhere that these are the options that are being used. In section 4.4, we state that block 1 and block 2 are being used. And then you need to implement those if you have large size and payload sizes.
Yes, but the problem is that on client side, we cannot know what will be returned as a certificate, right? Whether this will be a reference or the whole certificate, even though we support the reference to it. So
that would argue for mandating block 2.
Right.
Block 2 support, I should say. Because you don't have to use it in every single packet.
okay, so let's. Are there any other comments on this?
I think we need to think a little bit more about content of section 4.4. This was a good discussion, and yeah, whatever we state in section 4.4 will be repeated here, I suppose.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I agree with Goran.
Okay.
Okay, so should we move on?
Yes. Yeah. So the question is in RFC 9148. I'm trying to look now. Are they mandating support for blockwise?
They're saying the co-op options used are block 1 and block 2, but I don't see, as you said, but I don't see a normative that they. No, indeed there is. EST co-op-S servers must implement block 1 and block 2. EST co-op-S clients must implement block 2.
Yeah, that sounds like a good requirement.
And then there is a statement that EST co-op-S clients must implement block 1 only if they're expecting to send co-op-S requests with a packet size that exceeds the path MTU.
Well, that's a weird way, but yeah. I mean, you do have IP fragmentation, so you do have a way out, but yeah, well, you probably shouldn't use it. And you may want to start using blockwise way before you reach your path MTU.
Okay, so essentially you agree with the normative text, but you find it weird how it is described? the rationale behind.
I think we could write a textbook that qualifies that last sentence some more. Maybe we don't want to do that. And it's definitely a boundary that is not wrong. So maybe we shouldn't change that.
Okay, so we keep the normative requirements from RFC 9148. Essentially, that would.
Yeah, the penultimate paragraph of 4.6, right?
Yes.
4.6, yes.
And maybe we should look through the document for the other co-op options if there is anything similar. Okay. I don't think there is, but just it seems that these points have we not mapped directly. We should make sure that we map in a good way from RFC 9148.
Okay, so I will take an action item to do that. So let's just write it down in the minutes. And I believe we can move on to the next slide unless there are other comments here. Yes, so this is I believe the last comment that I outlined in this presentation here. And the comment is on section 5, where there is a secure association between the EST client and the co-op to HTTP proxy. And Marco is stating that this may alternatively and more conveniently rely on OSCORE as well. And he's referencing an individual draft, Tiloka Core OSCORE capable proxies. So so my proposed action would be to informatively reference this draft as a way to establish a secure association between the EST client and the co-op to HTTP proxy, but not to mandate anything, essentially, just as a way architecturally how this could work.
So about the figure, there is an HTTP and in parentheses TLS. Maybe the figure should be adapted as well.
Okay, yes. Wait.
Oh, sorry, what figure is this figure?
This is figure 2.
Oh, right. So this figure is pointing at that you may use TLS and DTLS. And what so the hop by hop might be using transport layer security. But what Marco is saying here is that the hop by hop might use OSCORE. And then maybe we should also maybe we should take out TLS and DTLS from the figure and explain that part in the text. Marco?
Yeah, I was talking specifically of the lag between client and proxy. In fact, that's where you gain conveniency, especially from the client point of view. You may want to reapply that again also between the proxy and the server, but I expect that to be less considered.
Yeah, so yeah, I think you're right. So maybe the most interesting part is the DTLS there, taking out the DTLS parentheses and explain in the draft that it could be either DTLS or OSCORE.
Maybe you just want to say secure instead of DTLS.
Yeah.
And explain that in the text.
Yes, something like that.
So this is the case where we are not using end-to-end OSCORE, but hop-by-hop OSCORE. Is there some text about end-to-end OSCORE?
No. We actually the point here is that it is end-to-end OSCORE.
Oh, okay.
The question is, what kind of protection do you have between between client and proxy or proxy and server?
Okay, got it.
And it comes from the fact that you explicitly want the proxy to identify the client and securely interact with it. That's why you need something like DTLS, but Oscore can be more convenient in the interest of code reuse, for example, because the client may need to support Oscore only.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so the proposed action here is to add a paragraph in the text on essentially on this issue that we can use both DTLS and Oscore. Am I summarizing this well?
Yeah, either DTLS or Oscore.
Yeah, either. Yeah, of course.
Both.
You could use both as well.
No, I meant either. Yes. Okay. All right. I believe that is the last slide.
So, Melissa, when do you think you can update the draft?
So I already have a pull request in place for other comments that were not discussed here, which were just fixes. I will respond to the mailing list, and I believe I can release a new version of the draft by mid next week.
Understood.
Yes.
So if there's anything else, I'll move to the last one. So the last item on the agenda is EDHOC OS core profile.
So I don't have any update on the profile. I have, so I don't know if anyone else of the authors have done anything, but there is some planned updates which we didn't manage to do in time for this interim. What I've been working with is the Shepherd write-up on the revoked token. So that's the second point on the agenda. But that's not finished either, but I expect that to be finished first and then come back with the ad hoc Oscore profile for the next meeting or for the next IETF meeting, depending on how much we can progress it.
Okay. So thank you very much. Is there anything we missed before we close this session?
I missed that at the beginning. Who's the shepherd for the revocation?
I am, Göran.
Okay, thank you.
Daniel, anything you want to add before? So
No. So I guess the shepherd we can expect to have it in the two next week. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm working on it now. I hope to be ready soon. That's all I can say right now. But yes, I think it should be.
Can the chairs mark that in the data tracker? That makes sense.
I think it's marked. No?
Is it? Okay, good. Let me look it up again. Didn't find it this morning.
Oh, no, then it's not. Because I had the impression I updated that, but that was not this morning. Okay, yeah, we will work on it.
will we close the session?
Yeah. Thank you, Logan.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time. See you at the next interim meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.